All right, boom. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Bill Barhydt here, founder and CEO at Abra. Welcome to a super exciting episode of Money Talks. I actually don't know if we're going to get through this in an hour. We've got a lot. I've got my list here. We've got a lot to talk about today. So a couple of things. I'm going to talk about some news. But before I get to the crypto news, we're so fortunate that we get to work in the crypto world. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention what's going on in Haiti. I've got a lot of friends in Haiti. I've spent a lot of time there over the years and working on mobile money projects and other projects. And so, not what this country needed right now. Another actually a bigger earthquake than the one that hit them over a decade ago. And fortunately, it wasn't in the capital or near the capital like the last one was, but still I'm hearing over 2,000 people dead and probably going to get worse before it gets better, not to mention huge storms. So thoughts and prayers going out to the people and friends in Haiti. And if you can donate, please do. Afghanistan, what a disaster. What can you say about what's going on there? I was just looking at the pictures from the airport. It looks like a refugee camp, and it's the airport. So just heart-wrenching. And then, of course, here in California, I'm looking outside right now, and the sky is a little bit orange. I don't know if this is going to be a common August occurrence. It was much worse last August, where you couldn't even go outside, but it's back again. The fires are back, and they're not very close to where I live here. They're probably 100 miles away, but still there's an orange tint to the sky here that's not supposed to be there. And I was in SF last night, and the moon was basically a blood red orange, right out of some apocalyptic, novel again. But anyway, maybe we can escape the world for 58 minutes here and have a little bit of fun in the midst of all of this insanity. I've got a super exciting guest who I'll be talking about, Charles, in a few minutes. But before that, let's get to some news. We've got just another crazy week in crypto land. So let's bring up our screen share here, and I'll get to some news. Actually, it's on me to start the screen share. So let me get to that. Sorry about that. If I can just, I'll learn tech someday, and then all will be good. All right. But in the meantime, you have to deal with me. So you don't want to see me. So here's a screen share. So, BlackRock. Wow. So BlackRock is like going all in on crypto, from what I understand. A lot of my inside friends saying they're looking really heavily at different aspects of the crypto space, but they're definitely holding about $500 million now, upwards of 400 million plus in myriad mining stocks, which is super interesting to me. The U.S. market has just reaped a big windfall from the Chinese shutdown of their mining industry. I think I mentioned I've seen myriad friends in the mining space in the US over the past few weeks, and they all just are basically grinning from ear to ear. Basically, the Chinese government has thrown free money at them. What do I mean by that? So as the hash rate came down, right? So how does Bitcoin mining work? Well, a whole bunch of computers are trying to solve a game at the same time in order to win Bitcoin. And when those computers come offline, which is what happened in China, it's for a while, it's easier for the remaining computers to win. And because there's less competition, the ones in the US are winning more Bitcoin than before. It's a very simplified explanation, but some of them have seen 30, 40% windfalls, not to mention the price going up, which we'll obviously get to in a moment. So BlackRock getting into that space actually makes a lot of sense because they can do it via public markets. I get a lot of questions online about this one. What do I think about Binance? And so look, I think that Binance has been basically playing with fire for 3 years now plus, and basically, the gig is up, right? They're going to have to comply. They're going to be no different than any other regulated exchange that manages custody. All of the European governments are coming down on them. And look, I have no problem with Binance as a company, except I want a level playing field, meaning whatever you have to do with Abra to be compliant as a user, you should have to do with any other service that offers overlapping products, and they do. And so many of you actually use Binance and then bring your crypto over to Abra for Earn, for example. And you're going to find that now you're going to have to basically do the same KYC process that you do with Abra. KYC meaning know your customer, uploading your ID verification, et cetera, et cetera. So my take is that, like I said, everybody is going to have to do this regardless of where you are in the world. It's table stakes for playing in crypto. Get used to it, right? And Binance should be no different than any other company. A couple of things on the coin front. So I don't know how you pronounce it, but I say Syscoin. I don't know if you're familiar with this. Actually, maybe you should ask Charles about it when we get into it. It's an interesting project that I talked about a few weeks ago. They're up like 50% in the last 24 hours. I actually don't know why. I've been trying to figure out why. I don't know if it's just because the float is so small or the liquidity is pretty small. But one of the things I find really interesting about this project is they have this notary feature that enables token issuers to basically use external data sources that have some type of like, I guess as a notary feature, you're basically using an external validator of some kind. And I want to talk to Charles about that because I see kind of the Oracle function or external data sources as being a weak link in this smart contract model. So we'll get into that in a few minutes, but Syscoin on a tear, and we'll get to the charts in a moment. And lastly, our weekly comments from our illustrious SEC chairman here in the US. Now, I actually somewhat agree with him on these comments. I actually wish that they would just go away, but that's not going to happen. And it's actually probably going to get worse before it gets better. And when I say get worse, I think for most of you, and I get this feedback online because I actually posted the question, and unfortunately you didn't take it as a rhetorical question. A lot of you answered it. My question is, how many of you, or what my question was, how many of you actually say to yourselves, gee, I wish the SEC, CFTC, and other state regulators would come in and give me more protection because I don't feel protected enough from a financial services perspective. Now, obviously, I sound like a smartass when I ask that question because I'm being facetious, but I also am saying it that way because I already know the answer. And the answer is none of you in the crypto space feel that you need that. Most of you are smart enough to understand what you're getting into. And so let's leave that aside because that's an unrealistic perspective. The realistic perspective is the SEC, the CFTC, and the state regulators and everybody else in banking, they're here to stay. There's going to be more regulation coming, not less. And this past week, SEC Chair Gensler, again, as a reminder, former MIT professor who taught a class on blockchain. I've lectured in front of him before. He knows what he's talking about in terms of how crypto works, how blockchain works. We probably don't agree more than 50% on the current state of regulation, but he knows what he's talking about in terms of how it works, which is very different from a lot of his colleagues. And he astutely makes this point that most DeFi projects right now aren't really D, and I'm using D in air quotes because they call themselves decentralized finance or DeFi projects. But to me, the litmus test for DeFi has always been, is there an off switch? Can you shut it off? Well, if you can shut it off, which in most cases you can, how can it be DeFi? And so this is going to become a problem for a lot of these DeFi projects in the coming months because the SEC is looking at these projects as basically either security trading platforms or security issuance platforms with their governance tokens, some combination of the two. And I've made this case to friends in the space that, hey, you need to be aware that just because you're calling yourself DeFi doesn't mean that the SEC will see it that way. Right? It's just a word that you made up, and they can make up their own words to describe what you're doing. And I think they're going to. And so it's going to be interesting to see if and when the hammer comes down on DeFi. Okay, so interesting comments there. Let's talk about Bitcoin and Ethereum before we get to the topic of the day, which is Cardano. So on the Bitcoin front, let me go to my charts here. All right, so Bitcoin on a tear. So we're up 4% in today's trading day, higher in the last 24 hours. So yesterday's trading day was 4%. Today we're only about, let's say about 60% through the trading day and up another 4%. So it looks like Bitcoin wants to retest 50K. It's pretty obvious. I'm not a magician. We're at 48.7 right now. Now, I fully expect Bitcoin to bounce off of somewhere around 50K and have to test it a couple of times. Could be wrong. It could plow through it like it did a few times in the past. But given the resistance that we've seen, look, I'm holding. I'm not day trading Bitcoin. I feel like the sentiment is slowly turning, and that to me is extra bullish, right? Because I don't want euphoria, right? Euphoria to me says, okay, this is not realistic, and we're going to have one of these sharp pullbacks very quickly. I'm not sensing euphoria right now, and that's awesome. All right, Ethereum, similar. I remain, probably in the short term at least, more bullish even on Ethereum. Just from a price perspective, I wouldn't be surprised if we see 10K Ethereum this year, which would be an insane run up. Well, not compared to Cardano, but certainly given where Ethereum is right now, looking really bullish. The 1559 upgrade went really well. And I think I read that there were a few days where Ethereum was actually in a deflationary state for at least a few days. And I don't know if that's still the case, but it certainly did happen as far as I can tell. And when I say a deflationary state, that means that there's more Ethereum basically leaving circulation in that moment than actually coming into circulation. That's because of this base reward. And we'll talk about staking and mining with versus mining with Charles in a moment. So super bullish on Ethereum. And of course, as a segue into our topic of the day and our guest of the day, let's talk about Cardano for a second. Look at this. So basically, this trough here on July 20th, dollar recent peak here, 250. So that's basically the 2.5x run up. So more or less 150% up over 30 days. Absolute tear. I believe it's the number 3 cryptocurrency in terms of market cap right now. Why is that happening? Well, the reason that's happening is that people are super excited about this smart contract upgrade going on with Cardano. They recently or earlier migrated to staking and recently announced that on September 12th, they would be launching their smart contract platform. So, apparently it's a good time to own Cardano. So as a segue, let me bring on our illustrious guest for today. Charles Hoskinson is the founder of the Cardano project. I don't know, he'll probably correct me. And a super brilliant guy. If you haven't listened to any of his YouTube videos, I strongly recommend it. Charles, good morning or good afternoon, based on where in the world you are. How's it going?
Hey, Bill, it's good to see you. I'm out here in warm, sunny Colorado. And
All right,
welcome. You're out in California?
Yeah, I'm in Silicon Valley. Welcome to Money Talks. We've got a lot of people online here across Twitter, Periscope, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, a bunch of other channels. This will be obviously up on YouTube afterwards. So we're getting tons of questions already. I've got questions teed up from Twitter yesterday and on the live stream now.
Yeah.
So I got so many questions for you. Okay, so let's start with some basics, right? Because we don't have this is not a developer audience. Okay, so let's start with some basics. You're talking to my grandmother who has no idea. She's heard of Bitcoin because I brag about it all the time. What is Cardano, and why should people care?
Well, the easiest way of understanding Cardano, especially when you're talking to an audience that's not familiar with cryptocurrency, is to kind of start from Bitcoin, work your way forward and ask, well, what's the point of Bitcoin? What problem did it solve? So for over 25 years, all these cypherpunks were trying to figure out, how do we create this concept of decentralized money, or decentralized movement of value, some sort of network where no one's in control, no one's in charge, but then somehow, some way you can create an instrument, in this case, Bitcoin, that you can just teleport anywhere in the world. It's like email for money. You can send value to people. So that came out in 2009, and it took a few years for it to percolate. But then eventually it got to a point where people said, hey, this is useful and exciting. The problem is Bitcoin doesn't do much in its current design. It's a little slow. There's no programmability. It's kind of like the internet when we just had the web browser, but no JavaScript. You could build these beautiful static websites and you could put nice pictures and good fonts, but you can't have Amazon. You can't have Facebook. You can't have YouTube. So right around 2013, people started saying, well, why don't we have programmability? So instead of just having one system that's decentralized and you can teleport value around, why don't we make that programmable so that you can do all kinds of crazy things like ICOs and STOs and NFTs and DeFi and so forth. So that's where Ethereum came from. And that was kind of the second generation of cryptocurrencies. They said, we like the decentralization. We like the kind of the Austrian economics or this concept of finite value. But then at the same time, we want programmability. So that came out, created all these revolutions. And then people started saying things like, well, hang on a second here. This doesn't work so well with millions to billions of people. Hang on a second here. There's thousands of these things. We need standards and interoperability. We need to move value between the systems. We need oracles. We need metadata. Hang on a second here. These things are really hard to govern. If you remove a central actor and you need to update and modernize and upgrade these systems, who pays for that and who decides? So that problem of scalability, interoperability, and sustainability, we term the third generation cryptocurrencies. And now a whole new class of blockchains are coming out that do the things Ethereum did. So you got your smart contracts and programmability, and the things that Bitcoin did. You've got your decentralization and that ability to teleport value everywhere, but they're also sustainable and scalable and interoperable. So those are the Solanas and the EOSs and the Harmony ones and the Cardanos and the Tezoses and the Polkadots and the Algorands. It's a very diverse ecosystem. What makes us unique is that we didn't just start and say, here's a paper, we think this works. We were very science-minded. So we started from first principles back in 2015, and 2016, 2017 were the two big years for this, where we just went and got a bunch of labs at University of Wyoming and Edinburgh and Athens and Texas, and Tokyo Tech. And we hired all these scientists. We just wrote papers. We wrote 111 academic papers. Wow. We went through an enormous amount of peer review, the standards of the computer science world through conferences. And then we started building a high assurance version of those papers using a kind of a military grade language. It's called Haskell.
Was that your intent to basically slowly peer review individual pieces of this and say, okay, we have the pieces, let's bring it together and basically make the point that, okay, this has been mathematically proven to be correct as we go? Was that by design, or did it just work out that way?
Because it was really hard in 2015 to know what's real and what's not real. Like, for example, we didn't know if proof of stake is possible or not.
Right.
So we said, let's go ahead and build out a scientific corpus. And we're either looking for what's called an impossibility result, where we prove it can't be done, or we show how it's going to be done. And then you're just asking about trade-off profiles.
So can I dig in on that for one second? Because we have a lot of people from the Bitcoin world here who are very skeptical on proof of stake. What do you say, having gone through this peer review process, what do you say to people who say, hey, proof of stake is basically the equivalent of centralized government money and has no place in a decentralized cryptocurrency? How do you respond to that?
Okay, so you're always doing the same three things, whether you're proof of work or proof of stake. You're deciding who's in charge. The person who's in charge has to do something, and then the network has to accept that thing. So the problem is that first step. That's where everybody gets caught up. That first step in proof of work is the mining process, and that's what consumes all the energy. With proof of stake, it's synthetic. So if you have 25% of the supply, on average, 25% of the time, you get the right to do something, and you can do it yourself or you can give it to somebody. That's the difference between a pure proof of stake and a delegated proof of stake system. So the question is, who should be in control? And this is one of those exogenous, endogenous questions. Exogenous is mining. Someone outside of the system is doing something to be in control of the system, advance the system, build the system. Okay. The endogenous is somebody within the system is actually doing that. And so the question is, which is better? And I think there's trade-offs to both. When you deal with an exogenous system, you have something that's connected to the physical world. You have something that's connected to things like electricity and miners. And those people aren't directly connected to the price of the asset. They're not connected to the protocols operations. They're just there to do something. Okay. Yeah. Now, the problem with that model is as the price of the asset goes up, competition goes up, and there's an economy of scale phenomena. So what ends up happening is you go from lots of miners, and I used to be one back in 2011, mined with GPUs and these things, to vertically integrated data centers that are cost hundreds of millions of dollars with subsidized power and private ASICs. So over time, you get smaller and smaller sets of participation of the people who are in charge. So the system gets more federated. The other problem is there's no incentive for power reduction. Why? Because any gains you get, you just build more miners because it's a
It's the
competitive
opposite.
environment. So
Yeah.
you end up consuming more electricity.
Right.
The other thing is, if you have two proof of work chains that are roughly the same price and the same mining power, you actually have a perverse financial incentive to destroy one of the chains,
Yeah.
short sell it, and then move your miners over to the other chain if they have the same algorithm. So there's
Yep.
this winners take all mentality of proof of work where there can only be one for it to not be vulnerable to Goldfinger. Now, on the proof of
Yep.
stake side, you have a plutocratic mechanism where those who have more say. So some people aren't quite comfortable with that, but that's how shareholder theory tends to work for all of our publicly traded companies. And there are all kinds of things you can do to mitigate that if desired. It's really just about the resource. So you can invent a proof of merit. You can have multiple resources, so multiple tokens in the system with different economics behind them. That doesn't necessarily invalidate the system. The other thing is if you hold the token, you tend to want to care about its price appreciation and its stability, or else you're destroying your own money. So whereas the other system, they're disconnected from that token and they're mercenary, the other system, they only work within that system. Okay. The other thing is it's a virtual resource. So we saw recently with the China mining crackdown, it's very expensive, time consuming, in some cases impossible to move your physical resource from one country to another country. In proof of stake, it's a virtual resource, so you can redeploy it at a click of a mouse from one country to another country. So there are philosophical differences here. And what we did over the last 6 years, and others like Algorand and so forth, is we kind of built up this big scientific corpus and saying, are there things that are unique to proof of work that can't be replicated in proof of stake, or are they equivalent? And what we've discovered over the last 6 years of scientific research is that they're equivalent in terms of utility, from everything from random number generation to timekeeping to the ability to bootstrap from Genesis. There's papers that are peer reviewed, cited hundreds of, in some cases, thousands of times, and with real running protocols in market that are securing more than $100 billion of value that demonstrate that these capabilities are equivalent. So it's now a philosophical gap. Where, you know, who do you want to be in charge? An exogenous mercenary resource or an endogenous internal resource? And are you comfortable with those dynamics? And for grandma, it doesn't matter. Okay, because she's a consumer of both. She cares about operational costs, user experience, and reliability in these types of things.
She doesn't ultimately. She doesn't want to know it's there, right? She just wants to know that the application that's using it is working and she can trust it.
Right.
Right. So before we get on to that topic of smart contracts and what they're going to do for us, just one more question. I think we have some basics on staking. Explain how the yield model works in Cardano when you're staking. We get a lot of questions on this. Just the mechanics of it. What's actually happening?
Well, it's a pretty simple system. So there's timekeeping inside the system, and we break it down to epochs, and those are about 5 days. And basically, there's a situation where you have proportional elections. So if you have 25% of the supply on average, not guaranteed, but on average, depending on how the random numbers work, 25% of the time you have the right to do something. Now, you can either give that resource to someone else, and that's called delegation, or you can host a private pool and consume it yourself. So it just depends on the amount you have. Then if those people show up for when their allotted time comes and make the block, they get paid for it, because it's compensation for services. And then there's a yield curve and it decays over time. And we parameterized it around 5.5%, I think. And then every single epoch, it decays a little bit. And then it'll go on for about 140 years. And the emission will go from where we started at 31 billion coins to 45 billion by 2140. And it turns out that there's actually a pretty good way of running a system. So, it's a multi-layered system. There's the individual holder, there's the stake pools that they actually delegate to, and then there's performance metrics. And there's a lot of dynamics about trying to create an ideal amount of stake pools in the system. So one of the things that we tried to create is this K factor. We wrote a paper out of Oxford to kind of try to balance this, right? But the basic idea is that the price of ADA goes up, K increases, and K is the amount of ideal stake pools in the system. So K right now is set to 500, but we actually have over 3,000, but the top 500 actually make the most profit. And then as the value goes up, K can increase. So actually the system gets more decentralized over time relative to the price. And it's the opposite with Bitcoin. So that's one great dynamic. The other part of it is that delegation doesn't require bonding. So that's a common thing we see with other cryptocurrencies that are in the proof of stake space. Because we did all the research, we figured out you don't need to lock your tokens in order to stake them. So you
Okay.
have your wallet, you just click a button, which pool you like, and eventually multi-delegation's coming next year. And then you just stake there, but you can access it anytime and send it to Binance or to Coinbase or pay somebody, and whatever's left over will get redelegated. Other systems actually require you to lock your tokens for some period of time because they're worried about forks and other problems, but our protocol doesn't suffer from that problem.
Got it. Super interesting. All right, let's segue into the meat of this. When I think about the future of decentralized systems, right now I think about, post Bitcoin or post file sharing, post Bitcoin. Now I think about obviously stable coins, NFTs, the future of decentralized finance. And one of the key yardsticks for that is developer support, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Ethereum clearly has had the most developer support up until now, which is why all of these projects that are doing NFTs and DeFi and stable coins basically run on Ethereum, and then it creates kind of a negative feedback loop, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? So why will something like Cardano smart contracts, break and potentially either break that cycle or create its own cycle in parallel?
So, it's kind of funny. Everybody says, well, Ethereum has all the network effect. How are you going to get all their network effect? And I was like, guys, we're very small relative to the set of all developers. There's only about 80,000 or so Solidity developers. There's over 25.4 million developers in the world.
Right.
So it really comes down to use, utility, and markets that you're playing in. So one of the things that we did over the last 4 years is we built a lot of connections throughout Africa, and we've been systematically onboarding a lot of African customers into our system. Like, for example, the Ministry of Education deal we did in Ethiopia, 5 million people there. And there's a potential to grow that to 20 million over the next 24 to 36 months. So when we say, okay, who is actually going to be a real consumer of DeFi? Is it going to be some kid yield farming in New Jersey, and it's mostly Ponzi-like behavior, and it's probably going to get regulated very heavily in the next 24 months? Or is it a person who doesn't have a bank account, who needs to get a loan and doesn't want to pay 75% interest?
Totally.
So when you look at these two demographics long-term, 3 years, 7 years, 10 years, and I know we don't like to do that in our industry. It's always like when, moon, and what's happening tomorrow. But if you're building protocols that you want to change the world with, you have to have a longer time horizon. Then you start realizing that there's not the right product market fit, not the right product market customer fit yet. So you proactively first have to bring the right customers in. Second, you have to understand there's a lot of B2B2C in the adoption of these protocols. So for example, if you get Microsoft as a client, you potentially have 2 billion customers. So no one's quite done that yet. But the reality is, when Fortune 500 governments are procuring and going into these spaces, they look at things like stability. They look at things like assurance, because it's not about rapid growth like Silicon Valley thinks. It's about protection of the networks they already have. They have too much value at risk to risk rapid innovation. So you have to say, who's in the position right now to do high assurance software? No one ever got fired for buying an IBM software. That's certainly not Ethereum, where there's $600 million hacks, on a monthly basis, and people are in a rush to just get stuff out, and everything goes up and down 90% too quickly. So there needs to be a marketplace for sustainability and for assurance and so forth. And that's underutilized in our ecosystem. The other thing is, how do you bring those 25.4 million developers on board?
Right.
Well, we have three strategies. We have the pond, the island, and the ocean. That's what I call it. The pond is kind of like what Ethereum does. So bolt on a copy of the Ethereum virtual machine and be interoperable with the 80,000 Solidity developers, and you can use all your Ethereum tooling in Cardano. That's coming.
Just to be in English, so that means that if I have an ERC20 contract for a stable coin or some other token or an NFT 721 contract, in theory, that will be literally compatible.
You can run it because it's like running the Java virtual machine. There's one on Android and there's one on Windows. And so they're different virtual machines, but your Java code will run in both environments.
So that's part of the pond approach that you're.
That's the pond that Vitalik created, this Cambrian pond that does all these things. And then the island is what we do with Plutus and Haskell. And that's for high assurance software for the big guys, the Fortune 500s, the aerospace industry, places where if it screws up, you lose billions of dollars or people die. And that is underutilized in our marketplace. And we think we can make great strides there. And the oceans, the 25 million developers, the C++ developers, the C developers, the Java developers, all these other people. So you have a great piece of technology we built out of University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, with runtime verification called Yella, which is basically like taking LLVM, something that's been around, Apple created in 2003, and bringing it into the cryptocurrency space And there's already tons of compilers and other tooling that exist in that world that we can gradually port over. And that means over time, we can support mainstream programming languages and libraries and tools so that regular developers can actually build applications in our ecosystem. Right now, as an industry, we don't have demand for that quite yet. But the next 24, 36 months, we're going to see exponential growth in that demand. And right in that time horizons when that tooling comes in. So I think you need all three. And you need also predictable cost. And you also need the ability to understand how you're going to scale these things and run these things off chain. Because when you talk about a DApp ecosystem, it's not tenable to go and say, hey, I know you have $1 trillion worth of software living in this paradigm. Go rewrite all of it and re-express it in our system. We've been trying to do that with banks and mainframes forever, right? They're still stuck there. There's still COBOL code. There's still Fortran code, for heaven's sakes. It's crazy. Instead, what you need to do is say, let's add a service or new capabilities to your application that enables something like account creation or a better way of doing payments. And it's basically something that you bolt onto an existing application. So you need a system that works off chain as much as it does on chain.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we designed Cardano specifically for. And it's something that they kind of discovered in the Ethereum ecosystem that they needed to do. And they created Web3 and all these other things to be able to accommodate it. We built that right into the language and right into the ledger itself to be able to have a very graceful on-chain, off-chain exchange. We think that is also a key component to being competitive over the next 3 to 5 years, in addition to the product market fit, in addition to the island, ocean, pond, and all these other things.
So before we get into specific applications, to kind of summarize here, so it seems to me that the weak link in these decentralized systems is external data sources, right? We often refer to this now as the Oracle problem, because you're introducing a trusted third party into what effectively, theoretically, could be a trustless solution. How do you think about that? And do you think about that differently than other kind of layer one blockchain application systems?
Yeah, I mean, the Oracle problem is the single hardest problem in our industry. And it's part of that interoperability part of the third generation. It's like, how do you move value, people, and information between existing cryptocurrency systems and legacy systems? I can write a smart contract that say if the Denver Broncos win the Super Bowl, you get $1,000. Right. But who tells the smart contract that the Denver Broncos
who gets to decide that they won? That's right.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the single hardest problem with these types of systems, and that's exogenous data. So there are all kinds of approaches like what Chainlink is doing and dozens of others are doing. And really that marketplace is a layer two marketplace. It's the connecting tissue between our industry. And it comes down to basically the value at risk and the level of veracity you demand in your information. Is it okay to be partially true? Does it absolutely have to be true all the time? That's why Bloomberg is such a big company, because that was the market that they solved for the fintech industry. So the legacy players are going to come into our industry at some point because there's enough value on the table, some unsuspected ones and the usual suspects. And then we're also going to be building other protocols. Well, the key about Cardano is that when you want to do that, we're interoperable and can become easily interoperable with the standards that are already emerging with Ethereum. But then also we have a service layer in the system because of the stake pools, which is really new and interesting. So whenever you want to do something complex, usually what ends up happening in biology, for example, is you have cell differentiation. You go from a single-celled organism to a human. You have eye cells and nerve cells and heart cells. So your cells have the same DNA, but they do different things. Well, similarly, when you talk about complex systems, for example, a cryptocurrency where you need oracles and smart contracts and random number generation, these types of things. Well, what if you actually have some nodes that do specialized things? We're already starting to see that in the proof of stake revolution, where now we have a class of nodes that are stake pools and they're always on, they're always available. And that heterogeneity means that you could reuse them for services. Like you could have those pools come together and become a federated oracle. You could have those pools come together and offer off-chain services. You can have them with Bitcoin, for example. You have Lightning nodes, and those are basically a bridge into an.
So you could crowdsource the truth and get closer to a kind of decentralized solution in many cases, or decide to trust a single source of data depending upon what the application is.
Exactly. And the smart contract developer and the consumers of the smart contract ultimately have to decide their trust model. It could be as simple as here's the public key that's providing, and whatever they say is God. It could be we're going to have a weighted oracle that's connected to the stake pools. We could be an existing protocol like Chainlink, and it's an open system. And so, we support all of these approaches, and we're kind of rolling them out over time. And the community is building these things as well. There's several Oracle projects that are community sourced. And as soon as smart contracts go live, they're going to start turning things on and playing with things. And some will fail and some will succeed. And ultimately, the market is going to decide. And the point of interoperability is you have the capacity, whatever that Wi-Fi moment is for the movement of data and the veracity of data, the market will basically tell it and you support the standard. And then we all have that. It's a commoditized product.
Yep. So September 12th is the magic date when smart contracts turn on. Is that a staged launch? What happens on September 12th? And are there other dates that we need to be aware of after that?
So one of the magics of Cardano is we kind of built it with upgradability in mind. All these other guys, when they have hard forks, they're like, oh God, hard fork, what do we do? It's so stressful. What do I do with my coins? With us, we have something called the hard fork combinator. So there's an actual update system built into Cardano. So what happens is if you trigger the update system, the prior epoch, so every 5 days we have an epoch, then basically it just auto updates all the ledger rules and the clients update, and then they support the hard fork. And basically it's a superset of the prior rules. So the first release of Cardano was Byron. We can still validate Byron transactions and rules. The next release was Shelley. We did that last year, and you can still validate Shelley. And come September 12th, Goguen is here, and suddenly with that hard fork, you can do Shelley, you can do Byron and Goguen. And Goguen includes smart contracts. So not a lot's going to happen from the user or the exchange perspective. They just have to update nodes. But then immediately thereafter, you now have programmability in the system. So people can deploy smart contracts and build applications and so forth. And what will happen is the same thing that happens with all these systems. An application ecosystem will be developed. Now, one of the advantages we have is Plutus, the language we're launching with, is deeply connected to Haskell, a language that's existed since the 1980s. So as a consequence, there's 30 years of tools that exist there. So we don't have to build everything from scratch. We can borrow the quick check stuff, and we can borrow all the libraries and these other things for application development. And really what's going to happen is a small group, probably 500 to 1,000 of very evangelistic developers are going to build some cool, exciting, sexy things over the next few months. And those launch applications will really showcase the platform. Okay. And then what will happen is the next cohort will come in. We've already trained 3,000 people, actually. It's called the Plutus Pioneers Program. We've been running that for the last 4 months. But the next cohorts will come in, and then they'll build on top of that. And the next cohorts will come in, they'll build on top of that. And each layer will, you'll get more and more accessibility, better tooling, better development experience, et cetera, et cetera. And, there's plenty of funded applications ready to go to compete with DEXs and stablecoins and oracles and NFT marketplaces and so forth. It's going to be really exciting to see that happen.
Super interesting. Okay, before I let you go, I have to ask you this. So do you raise buffalo?
I do. I have 500 of them.
You're kidding me. So you got to explain this. I said, when I heard this, I said, this is one of those crazy things that's obviously not true. So go ahead.
Well, I got a ranch up in Wyoming. I got about 11,000 acres. It's 18 square miles. For you Europeans, it's 54 square kilometers. It's quite a big piece of land. And it came with bison. And I said, I guess I'm a bison rancher now. I mean, I have cattle and geese and chickens and lots of dogs and all these. I run a farm in Colorado. So I was pretty familiar with that, but I'd never raised bison before. And the problem with bison is they breed. So when I bought the ranch, it had 400 of them. Now there's 500 of them.
Go forth and multiply. Okay.
Yeah. And so I if you ever want some bison meat, I'm sure we can work something out.
I love it. There's a place in Los Gatos here where I live, and they have this bison burger, I think they call it. It's fantastic.
And by the way, we're going to get them on the blockchain. We have a great partner actually out in Sundance.
I knew there was going to be a segue. I just
yeah, we're going to do an NFT game called Crypto Bison, and then are also going to get the bison on the blockchain. So we have a partner called Beef Chain. They're based in Sundance, and they've already gotten about 1,000 cattle on the Cardano blockchain. All right. We have a parallel chain called Sheep Chain. You can guess what they put on the blockchain there. And so it'd be really cool to have Bison Chain and get them on the Cardano blockchain. And it seems like a novelty, but what's really cool about it is that there's a lot of problems in meat supply chains, especially abroad. Like you go to Mongolia or African nations. It's really hard to understand, is this high quality meat or if there's a disease that breaks out, what was the origin? So it turns out getting these things into a supply chain is very necessary for export tariffs and also health and safety. So it's really cool to be able to run pilots in my backyard at a low cost that we can then eventually port to Africa and Southeast Asia.
I love how you refer to that as your backyard, by the way. That's awesome. Wow, amazing. All right, well, I'm going to take you up on that. In the meantime, I think I've asked you a bunch of the key questions that people have been asking here. I could talk to you for hours about where this is going. It's super fascinating. In the meantime, I know you've got a ton of video out there on your YouTube channel. People can find you. I already linked to your Twitter handle, so people can follow you there. If people here want to really dig in on Cardano, what's the best place for them to go right now?
Yeah, we created Cardano.org as kind of the entry point. And whether you're a developer or you want to be a stake pool operator or you want to get funding through Catalyst, by the way, there's over $1 billion available through Catalyst. It's the largest decentralized organization in the world, and it's completely controlled by the Cardano community. Last round, we had 33,000 people vote. 154 ventures were funded already. Got another round up, $4 million available here soon.
Awesome.
So if you're interested in participating, doing something, Cardano.org is the entry point, and it'll get you where you need to go. There's hundreds of links, and there's documentation, there's GitHub repos and so forth. But we wanted that as the one-stop shop, as the routing point. And then, there's great channels like Reddit and Telegram, and we have a Cardano forum and so forth. And there's a wonderful community. It's over 1 million large, and they're super friendly and super excited. They've been very patient, and if you're friendly back, you'll have a wonderful experience with them.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We'd love to have you on again in a few months just to see how it's going, talk about some of the killer apps that you see out there. And, I'm a big fan of you and the work that your team has done. And, thank you so much for doing this.
And we have a summit next month, September 25th, 26th, Cardano Summit. I think it's cardanosummit.org. I can't remember the website, but or summit.cardano.org. But anyways, you go to cardano.org, it'll be advertised there.
Awesome.
We probably will have 20 to 50,000 people attend that.
Holy moly. All right. Well, maybe I'll make my way to, where is it?
It's going to be, it's an online and physical event. Physical, it'll be in Wyoming at Laramie alongside a few other places. And then also online, we partnered with Active Theory. So we built this beautiful little digital world, and you guys can have a little avatar and run around and attend it and watch the presentations that way.
Wow, super cool. Charles Hoskinson, founder of the Cardano project. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll hope to see you again on Money Talks. And please follow Charles on Twitter and check out cardano.org. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bill.
All right, man. All right. So thanks to Charles. So let's get back to some Abra updates. Thanks again to Charles. That was super interesting. What a smart guy. Yeah, Wyoming. I can't say too much, except I've been spending some time on Wyoming. All right. So Chris, you beat me to the punch. Chris here asking the question. Any update on Cardano? Yes, we have an update on ADA staking on Abra. So first big announcement is we will be launching ADA Cardano on Abra Earn. So yay. All right, finally. I didn't get the exact date I was hoping for before today, but I did get confirmation that it will be turned on soon. So I'll commit to saying highly likely in the next 10 to 14 days. And I'll certainly have an exact date for you either next Friday or online on social media before that. But we will for sure turn on Cardano in Abra Earn in the coming days. Okay, so look for that. We'll send out an email, push notifications, the normal messages to make everyone aware of the exact launch. Okay. Second thing I wanted to show you, and I'm going to bring up my demo here in a second. So a lot of you have been asking about security features and two-factor authentication in the Abra app. So just to be clear, when we talk about two-factor authentication, if you've ever used Google Authenticator or Authy or Microsoft's version, then you know what I'm talking about. So let me share my screen here. Give me 1 second. Share screen. There we go. As I said, sometimes, even though I have a degree in this stuff, I am somewhat technology challenged and I don't see it on my share. So let me unshare that. Let me cancel that. Share again. and I still don't see it. Okay, so, oh, there it is. I see it. All right. So, oh, it's not working. All right, so let me just describe what we're doing here, and then maybe I'll figure it out in the meantime. So we are launching a 2FA feature within the Abra app. So you go to, let me explain again what I mean by a 2FA feature. So today, when you go into the Abra app, you have to authenticate yourself to the phone, then you use your PIN code for the app. Now you have this option of going to wallet security, turning on 2FA, and then you will have to basically use a Google Authenticator or Authy or Microsoft Authenticator code whenever you want to do a withdrawal. And you have the option of turning it on. Once it should be on for everyone sometime next week. And I strongly encourage you to use 2FA once it's live next week. Okay, so so really excited about that. It's been a very common request from all of you, and yeah. So let me know if you have any questions about that. And let's see what else. So we talked about Cardano staking, which is coming soon, and let's see. Yeah, cool idea. I agree. When will we be able to deposit USDC into Abra? You can deposit USDC into Abra today. We support deposits for all the stable coins: USDC, USDT Tether, TrueUSD, DAI. All the major stable coins you can deposit and withdraw, actually. So let's say you have Bitcoin, you want to sell it and then withdraw USDC, you can do that as well. Or you can deposit USDC and convert it to Bitcoin or whatever you want. So no problems there. Just click on the add money function in the Abra app, and then you'll be able to see all of the currencies that you can deposit. Okay, it's super cool, very easy. I do it all the time. So let's see what else. A lot of questions here. Thanks for the positive feedback for Charles. We were super excited to get him on, and we're going to do more of this. We're going to have other leaders from the crypto space. People are asking about the interest rates. I don't know what the interest rate is going to be. It'll probably be similar to what the current staking rates are, I would assume, but I don't know the current rates and what it'll be at launch. But it'll be a good one. I see Bill smiling very hard. Yeah, I'm really happy about getting Cardano and Abra earned. So yes, I'm smiling hard about that one. Kick-ass interview. Well, thank you very much. Let's see. So the other really cool thing about Abra Earn is that it just works, and we hide the complexity. So you put in this case, the ADA or the ETH or the Bitcoin into Abra Earn, and we handle the complexity of earning that interest for you, and it just shows up. And I love Monday mornings now because I get those push messages into my Abra wallet, and like I said, it just works, right? And who doesn't love getting push messages saying you've got free Bitcoin, free Cardano, free Ethereum in your Abra wallet? Let's see. Fosty says he's moving to the U.S. to buy himself a farm. Why not? I'm definitely going to be spending some time in Wyoming. Let's see. So a lot of people asking me about privacy and fungibility. I actually do worry a lot about this, and I've been pretty public that I think that fungibility and privacy is probably the biggest challenge that Bitcoin faces today, is this kind of lack of fungibility. And what I mean by that is that because of the way Bitcoin manages debits and credits, you've heard this phrase UTXO, which means unspent outputs. It's actually easy to track which inputs and outputs are getting spent if you don't know what you're doing, and most people don't, and so it basically is all out there for everyone to see. And that also means that every Bitcoin is not the same. So you can have a situation where Bitcoins that flowed through Iran are worth less than Bitcoins that were mined in the United States. And that shouldn't be the case. All of these Bitcoins should be worth exactly the same. Okay. And that's what I mean by fungibility. And privacy on top of that guarantees that not only do I not know where the Bitcoin came from, or I can't know, and it's truly fungible. And so all this talk about regulation in terms of being able to track where crypto comes from should go out the window, because it should be built into the base protocol layer, as it is with Zcash and other privacy coins like Monero, that it's simply completely fungible, completely private. And I hope that at some point that makes its way into all of the top cryptocurrencies, so that we have this aspect of privacy and fungibility at the base layer. Okay. So people asking if we support native Cardano. Yes, you can just deposit. You can go into the add money function, like I mentioned before. For all of the cryptocurrencies we support, you can deposit native crypto directly into the Abra wallet. Okay. You can withdraw directly to a hardware wallet. Somebody asked me if we support hardware wallets. We have probably double-digit percentage of our users that don't keep their crypto on Abra. They do their trades and they withdraw to a hardware wallet. Most of our users don't do that because they use Abra Earn to earn the interest. But if you want to, if you just want to use Abra to exchange as a very simple trading model, and then migrate to your hardware wallet or withdraw to your hardware wallet, no problem at all. Okay. All right. Let's see. All right. So let's see. What else do we have to do here? I've got a lot of questions. Yep. All right. So a lot of people asking me about new coins and what's coming. So we did have an announcement about some new token listings from a couple of weeks ago. So hopefully you all, if you're not on the Abra email list, you need to go to our website and sign up for the email list. It's super easy. We don't spam you with tons of email. It's important announcements, updates on Money Talks, updates on new token listings, new features. Strongly encourage you to do that. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube feed, please click the subscribe button. It really helps us and sends a message that you all support what we're doing. And it actually helps us with Google and YouTube in terms of promoting the video. The more people that subscribe, the more promotional presence we get. Okay, I'll take a couple more questions and then call it a day. Let's see. So Casey says, I've already earned interest on Abra. Good for you. And Doug asks, can we vote new coins? So Doug, if you press the add button to add new cryptos to your portfolio and you don't see that cryptocurrency there, you have the option of sending a recommendation to Abra to add that specific cryptocurrency. And we do take that into account. There's a lot of factors that I've talked about many times in the past that go into token listings, and your wants and desires are one of those factors. Okay, so take advantage of that and let us know which tokens you want, and we're always looking into adding more tokens. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Let's see, what else do we have here? I'm going to take one more question. That interview, that's one of the reasons I haven't done a lot of interviews. It's actually exhausting. Believe it or not, it's not I'm not an interviewer for a living. I run a company, and I think interviewing people is more exhausting than running a company that manages lots and lots of people's money, which shouldn't be the case. But well, I'll take two more questions. Lewis asks, why is Abra still not available in Canada? Louis, Abra is available in Canada. You can use Abra Trade in Canada. And I believe Abra Earn, but Abra Borrow is not yet available. I may have that wrong, but Abra Trade is definitely available. If Abra Earn is not live, I know we're working on getting it live if it's not already there. So check it out. And if that's not the case and something's wrong there, please send an email to support at Abra.com. And the other question I got is what do I think about this Poly network hack? So hopefully well, not hopefully, but you may have heard that this Poly network hack happened, and I think something like $600 million worth of crypto was lost and then returned. So look, I've talked about this many, many times. I think that we're so early in DeFi, and Charles mentioned this. People are in such a hurry to launch stuff that the way things get tested is just not right. We need more code auditing. We have this concept of a test net in crypto, which says we have beta versions of software which aren't using like your real crypto. It's using effectively fake money. And we don't run these systems long enough on these test nets, mostly because people are afraid of not being first to market. Well, when it comes to money, your most important priority should not be being first to market. It should be not losing the money that people are staking in your DeFi contracts in the first place. And I hope that this perspective starts to change and we see a lot more code audits, time for testing, payments for people finding these bugs on test nets before they move to the mainnet. Now, fortunately, in this case, my understanding is all of the stolen funds were returned because the developer was trying, in this case, to show the network that they had a vulnerability in the contracts. And my understanding is it wasn't a weakness in their network, but in the contracts. I could be wrong on that. I haven't spent a lot of time on looking at it, but okay. So all right, I'm going to take a couple more. If you don't want to stick around, that's all good. I'll take a couple more questions. Is there a plan to reduce the delay when moving tokens from earn to trade? So Tracy, we try our best to move coins from earn to trade in as near real time as possible, because you're actually buying different lending contracts to generate that yield. It's not always possible to move in real time, but the vast majority of movements happen the same day, especially during the week. And we're always looking at ways to improve that. But I think for most people, it works fairly well. Just recognize that when you're in Abra earned right now, it's kind of like it's issued by a trust bank, the account, and it's like treat it like a savings model, right? And so in that regard, it's not always easy to just move the money in real time, depending upon how you're earning that interest. Let's see. Borrow in Nevada. I actually believe it's coming if it's not already live. Just go to the app and check it out. We launched a couple of new states this week. And so generally you get an email if you're in one of those states. And so if you click on the borrow button at the bottom of the screen, it'll tell you if Abra Borrow is available in your state if you're in the US. And I think we're live in like 44 states or 45 states right now, and the number is going up all the time. All right. Well, I'm exhausted and I'm looking forward to the weekend. Hopefully you are too, with all the craziness going on in the world. Maybe we can, relax a little bit and the news will be a little bit better next week, hopefully out of Afghanistan, Haiti, and maybe with these California fires. There's fires in Greece. I saw the photos there. It's horrific. But as I said, we're so lucky that we get to do what we do. And it gives us a little bit of an escape from this crazy world at the same time. So with that, thank you all so much, as always, for joining us on Money Talks. Thank you to Charles Hoskinson. It was a pleasure to have you. Look forward to, actually, I should say we've got an exciting little change of pace for next week's episode. I'm not going to give it away now. We'll announce it online. So follow us on Twitter at Abra Global for the announcement about next week's Money Talks. In the meantime, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone. Take care.